Hack Learning episode 69. Let's do it. Welcome to the Hack Learning podcast. I'm your host, Mark Barnes, providing right now solutions to some of your biggest teaching and learning problems. Now, let's hack learning. And at the time of this podcast, it is election time. And we know that people are biased, right? And that's not a negative. We're inherently biased. We have biases. We have feelings about things that are biased by other things. I talk to my kids all the time about the election and, who they like, who they don't like. They're very free with their opinions. And oftentimes I find that their opinions tend to be very similar to my own. I think they're influenced. You might say they're biased, right? They're biased by their parents, by listening to us talk, because fortunately, in many cases, kids look up to their parents and they want to emulate them. And I like to think that's a good thing for most things. Although, of course, I want my kids to have their own opinions, and I encourage that, and I say, your opinion over time might change, and you may think a lot differently from how I think in the future, and there's nothing wrong with that. So today we're talking about bias in education. As a teacher, you have bias. And oftentimes we let those filter into the classroom. And I think it's okay to share your opinion. I've said that on this show. But there are times when your bias can interfere with learning. And I want to talk a little bit about this piece that James Sturtevant wrote in Hacking Engagement, 50 Tips and Tools to Engage Teachers and Learners Daily. And in there, he has a tool that I think is really amazing. And it's not always about the technology. This is something that Jim, a 32-year educator, created. And he calls it a Teacher Disposition Assessment, TDA. And I'm going to share a little bit of what Jim writes in Hacking Engagement about this Teacher Disposition Assessment, because I think it's really powerful, and I'm going to share some of his advice for uncovering your own bias so that it doesn't interfere with teaching and learning in your class. So let's listen to what Jim says, and I'm quoting from his book. As a rookie teacher, I thought I had it all figured out. For some odd reason, I went out on a limb and professed a position on a controversial subject to my kids. As I bellowed my views, I was inspired by a lot of nodding. There was no doubt the majority were thoroughly on board. I could sense them thinking, "Go, Mr. Sturtevant, we're with you." I was shocked. However, when a student confronted me after class, this young lady, while a good student, always seemed standoffish. But she was anything but aloof on this day. "Mr. Sturtevant, you should be careful about promoting your views so passionately. I don't agree with you, and I'm not alone." Jim says, while this interaction unnerved me, my ego was still invested in my position. After she left, an intense, sinking feeling suddenly drained my body. It was truly an epiphany. Of course, my student was right. I was erecting barriers between us. Why in the world would I alienate certain kids who may not agree with me on a certain issue? Now, this really hit me and struck me when I read this for the first time in Jim's book. And Jim and I are friends, and we talk often. And this is really a fascinating thing, what he came up with here. So you think about what's going on, and think about your own teaching, whether you're a teacher or a parent, or you deal with kids in any way, or you teach even adults. How do your biases get in the way, and what do you do about it? Well, Jim has a hack, and that's what hack learning is all about. He's got 50 of them in Hacking Engagement. He says his hack is to create a Teacher Disposition Assessment, which measures bias. Student experts who consume your presentations daily generate critical information. The Teacher Disposition Assessment is a set of teacher-created prompts based on potentially controversial subjects that may surface in the course content. So think about your own course, your own subject area, and think of these controversial subjects that may come up. And Jim gives an example in hacking engagement. He says he makes a statement to kids, and he also mixes in a tool. I said it's not all technology, but technology helps. He uses a powerful tool called SurveyMonkey, and it's easy. Any teacher can set this up. You can use a free version. You can set up a survey in no time and launch it, and kids can answer anonymously. So here's what he does. He says that he teaches world civilizations, and this is a prompt he gave on one of his SurveyMonkeys under this Teacher Disposition Assessment. So he puts on the survey, Muslims should be restricted from entering the United States. Okay, now here, pay careful attention to the choices his students have. Number 1, Sturtevant strongly agrees. 2, Sturtevant somewhat agrees. 3, Sturtevant somewhat disagrees. Sturtevant strongly agrees. Sturtevant's opinions on this issue are unclear. So you think about what he's doing. He's asking his students anonymously to say their perception of how he thinks based on things he's saying in class. Now, in hacking engagement, Jim says it's fine to be provocative. Such statements will engage your audience. Student responses provide wonderful insights. The hack could help you dramatically in the engagement department. You may be shocked by what you learn. You may have to make adjustments in your statements and actions, but that's the idea behind the TDA, or Teacher Disposition Assessment. Now, Jim provides some great what you can do tomorrow ideas to get started with a TDA, Teacher Disposition Assessment. I want to share those with you, but before I do, I want to talk about our sponsor, Kiddom. Hey, education hacker, Kiddom helps teachers turn personalized learning from a buzz phrase to reality. With Kiddom, teachers gain access to an unlimited library of standards-aligned content with beautiful, actionable reports. The best part is, Kiddom is 100% free. Check it out today. Go to kiddom.co/hacklearning to start engaging your students one-on-one. That's kiddom.co/hacklearning. And the great thing about Kiddom is it is a digital tool that allows teachers and learners to communicate back and forth. So if you were using Kiddom, you could probably use it and its features to create a teacher disposition assessment, which is what we're talking about today. So we're getting our kids to help us uncover our biases. So how do I do this? Here's what James Sturtevant, author of Hacking Engagement, says for you to get started right away tomorrow, which is what we do in Hack Learning, what you can do tomorrow. People love this. So he says, first, craft a list of, and this is in quotes, loaded topics. These are potential content bombshells that frequently emerge during a semester. So you make your list, and then he says, now create a teacher disposition assessment. This assessment will be comprised of controversial statements about topics in your content. Students will try to determine your disposition toward such statements. So you think about what we said a moment ago, and I gave you that statement. Muslims should be restricted from entering the United States, Sturtevant says. And then his choices for the kids are agrees, disagrees, and so on. And that helps him get an idea of what their perception of him is. And it, in effect, then is uncovering his own biases. What a fabulous thing. It's so powerful. So also, Jim says that you can conduct a post-assessment debriefing. You can learn as much from student feedback as you can from the assessment itself. So what you're going to do is share the overall responses from your teacher disposition assessment and ask students what it says about you and their perceptions of you. Imagine the power of this conversation. Now, I think you could do this even with young kids, probably down as early as, I don't know, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. I think you could ask kids these kinds of questions and look at the responses and have them interpret what their peers think you think. It's really an amazing thing, and you're going to learn so much about yourself from this TDA. Jim also says that you can prompt students to reflect, ask them to monitor their statements and actions over the next 24 hours. Perhaps this activity will influence their behavior as well. it could lead to some fascinating conversation the next day. Consider what you can do with uncovering your own bias, your biases, if I said that right. What can you do? How will that impact teaching and learning in your class? How will it impact what you say or what you do not say to your kids? And I'm not trying to censor anyone. We would never do that at Hack Learning. What we're saying is that we all have biases, and they can impact teaching and learning, and we just need to be aware of that and be careful of it. Hey, today's program brought to you by Kidam. Check it out, and also check out Hacking Engagement, 50 Tips and Tools to Engage Teachers and Learners Daily. You can find it at hackingengagement.com, and you learn more about the Teacher Disposition Assessment. You can find links on our show notes page. You can also find links to our sponsor, Kidam, and you can find an easy link to subscribe to the Hack Learning podcast. Thanks for listening to Hack Learning, and go out and try that Teacher Disposition Assessment and let us know how it goes. As always, we continue the conversation at #HackLearning on Twitter and on the show notes page at hacklearningpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.